It is 7:30 in the morning on Friday, January 30th, here in Berlin. In the United States, it's obviously 6 hours earlier, and everyone is hopefully still asleep. Um, I am here at the World's Fair of Money, which is a big coin show that happens here every year. This is the 20th year that they've had it. I have been coming for 12 or 13 of them. So it's been interesting for me. This is always a fun event because I get to talk to people in Europe, sort of all in the same place at the same time, and kind of take the lay of the land. And I've been coming here since Obama was still president. Obama was president once, right? Yeah, I think he was. He was. And I remember the first time that we came here after Trump got elected. And, it was a couple of weeks after. So we weren't sure what to expect, what the reception would be. And it wasn't as chilly as we thought. I think at that time people were more apprehensive, maybe curious. Certainly there were people who welcomed the change. But for the most part, it was a time of, who's this guy? What's going on here? Well, that was the first time. The second time, um, a lot different. Last year when I came here, there was a big opening night cocktail party, and one of my friends from Poland just looked at me sadly and gave me a hug, knowing what was happening. Now, I actually got the same look of sadness and the same hug from a different friend in Poland. Um, and a friend from Norway was like, "Is it nice to be in a non-Trump country?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it is." But the main kind of takeaway from everybody that I've spoken to, no matter what country they live in, is WTF. And not in a mean way or in an angry way, but in a genuinely perplexed way. Like people don't understand how this is happening and why we're doing this to ourselves. That's pretty much the takeaway, right? So, another friend from the Netherlands, she said that, we have our right wing guy too, Gert, whatever his name is, the guy with the hair. And for a while there, he did very well in the elections and he had enough seats in parliament that he should be prime minister. Um, but they were like, no, we're not doing that because the other people just wouldn't work with him. They wouldn't form a party with him because all the guy wanted to do was complain. He didn't want to govern or do anything, or he just wanted to blame immigrants and be an asshole and I guess get on TV and stuff. And they didn't make him prime minister, you know. So maybe there's a takeaway there. I guess for us it's too late. And then a friend from Wales, a Welshman, as he says, towards the end of the party, was like, I don't get it. Like what? And he was also WTF, but and I want to stress, nobody's mad. I mean, maybe people are, but nobody that I talk to is angry. People are puzzled. They're confused. They're genuinely bewildered and baffled that we in the United States have put this guy in a position of power. I'm like, why? Why did you do that? What's going on there? And he asked it almost sort of rhetorically. And I said, well, I have an answer. I went into the whole spiel that we've talked about a million times about Fox News and PSYOP and military grade PSYOP and Trump being a Kremlin agent and Russia and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, I'm just as baffled as they are. I really am. I mean, how are we doing this to ourselves? How are we doing this to ourselves? It's an own goal, as they say here in Europe, in soccer. But the saddest comment that I got from another friend from Poland, he said, in Poland, we always know where the enemy is to the east. We've had that there for centuries and all of that. But we never thought that we would also have to watch out from behind our back. that the enemy might also be coming from the West, from the United States. And he's just like, nobody anticipated that. And that made me very sad. Um, and he's right. And nobody here anticipates it either. And, it's been very busy. I've been working a lot, doing work things and not really, paying attention as closely as I have been usually. But, uh, but I keep talking about it because everybody wants to talk about it. So, um, then it sort of hit me because the one sort of big topic that everybody's talking about here is the price of precious metals. I'm not, the sort of person that's necessarily up on this kind of thing, but the price of gold is way up, way high. The price of silver is also way high. It was high when I was in Florida in January, and it's up like 20% from then. So you have these precious metals going up and up and up and up, which affects the pricing of everything. So you have dealers here trying to figure out what things are worth. They're trying to bake the price of silver into the price of Roman silver coins, which are more valuable because they're ancient and cool and rare than they are because they have X amount of silver in them, but it still affects the price. It's all very complicated stuff, right? Well, one thing I didn't see this time, there was a guy years ago who was selling vault space in New Zealand for rich people to put their gold in. He was MAGA, that guy. I think he actually had a hat. This was back in the first term, maybe 2017, 2018. They were, people are parking their gold in New Zealand, these rich people. So enough so that this guy had an entire company that's what they did. Anyway, the point is that people here are talking about precious metal pricing, which of course they are, right? And everything's expensive now too because the exchange rate sucks. It's basically, a euro is $1.20, so everything's 20% higher in price, and nobody wants to take dollars. Everybody wants to get paid in euros. Can't blame them. Now, this isn't usually what happens. Usually, you have dollars. Everyone's very happy to get dollars. So these are changes. The pricing, the silver market has roiled the pricing structure, right? And then it occurred to me, it's like, this is all Trump's fault. The reason, or the main reason, I think, that the gold price is high, that the silver price is high, is because of Trump. It's because he's volatile, he's unpredictable, and he's fucking stupid. And those things are not, things that go well together when you're talking about financial markets. I mean, the whole war with Jerome Powell doesn't help. I mean, nobody knows what he's going to do, including in his cabinet. So if you have a guy openly calling to invade and annex Greenland, I mean, that would completely screw up the markets in terrifying ways, as I talked about on the show. But the markets take that into consideration. People with money take that into consideration. Are you going to have dollars? Are you going to put it in gold? What are you going to do? And I thought, this one guy, in his pig ignorance and his weird fealty to Putin, has affected all of this. And, this is just a tiny little industry, a collectibles industry, right? In a world of much more powerful, vast, and more important, frankly, things to do. And if we're affected this much, my God, everybody's affected this much because the financial markets affect everybody. And one more thing that I wanted to bring up, because I wanted to get back to the question of why? Why are we doing this? Why are we letting this baboon, this orangutan, set our economic policy and do this to not just us, but to everyone in the world? And I think the answer is that even though we fought, obviously, in the Second World War, we didn't win it on our own, and to get to where the battlefields were, we had to leave the country. We had to come to Europe. We had to go to the Pacific. The battle was not happening in New York or Chicago or Cleveland or Minneapolis. It was happening in France. It was happening in Belgium. It was happening in the Wake Islands, Guadalcanal, whatever. Wake Island, not Wake Islands. Anyway, we were insulated from it. Obviously, people made sacrifices and there was a lot going on, but the battles themselves did not rage in the United States. And they did rage in Europe, and everyone in Europe is affected by that. Even people my age, who weren't alive during the war, their grandparents or their parents were around during the war, and their lives were affected by it. In real ways, not just and also in the aftermath of the war, where Stalin took over, most of Eastern Europe. We don't have that precedent. We haven't learned the lesson that the Europeans have learned at firsthand. And I think that maybe is part of the problem, and part of the source of our ignorance is that, I think maybe Americans are the sort of learners where if something doesn't happen to us directly, we don't get the lesson. And that's maybe what's happening right now. We're at the part where we're getting the lesson. We're getting the lesson. So those are my thoughts here in Berlin as the sun rises behind me. It's very cold here. It's not as cold as it is in New York, but it's cold, colder than usual even. They had snow too, unseasonably. It's been a weird weather place everywhere. Again, what affects one country affects all countries now. It's not, we're more intertwined than ever. And whatever happens with Trump, come what may, is going to affect the rest of the world. It already has, and it's going to continue to. And we owe it to ourselves and to the rest of the world, to our friends in Europe, especially, to get this guy out, get him out. There's no reason for him to be president. He's a criminal. He's a Kremlin asset. He doesn't understand economic policy or anything else. And he's really dumb and mean. He's a mean person. None of these are good things. And obviously everybody watching this knows this. But, I just hope that when we learn the lesson, it doesn't come at the cost that it came for people in Europe back in the late 30s and early 40s. So those are my morning thoughts here in Berlin. I hope everyone has a good weekend. There's no 5/8 tonight because Berlin. And we'll be back next week. So in the meantime, I'm going to speak it. I'm going to speak it into existence because what I want, what I know, is that we shall prevail.